Hello again, it's me, Danielle. I'm here tonight to talk to you about some technology I use in my classroom with my first graders. The technology I use with my first graders is um, in reading mostly. I use technology for math too, but the two I'm going to choose are what I use for reading. Um, as most of you know, because you work with some of you work with older students, some of you work with younger students, but they all come in talking about their phones, talking about video games, talking about their iPads, their tablets. It seems that their whole world revolves around technology. So in my classroom, in first grade, reading is important in all grades, but in first grade, it's you set the ground for reading. They learn how to read in first grade. Um, so building their stamina to read for long periods of times, as well as learning to sound out words, learning to read with fluency. Those are all components that um, I try to teach my students. So two websites I use in my classroom for reading are Epic and MyOn. And both of these students get access to through our iPads in our classroom. Students still use traditional books in their book bins. They read from their book from normal books that they pick based on their interests from my classroom library. They read for 20 minutes a day by themselves. Everything's nice and quiet, just so they're getting that, they're learning how to choose books, and they're still reading from a book. And then they're given the option where they can either continue reading from their book or they can read on one of these websites I'm about to explain to you, either MyOn or Epic. And for the most part, most of my students will choose to switch over and use the iPad. However, once in a while, there are a few students who don't, who kind of choose to um, just read from the book bin. But my first one I use is Epic, and Epic is free. What I like about it is students can access this at home if they type in, their class code, which is right over here. A lot of times, since I work in a low-income school, students don't have books at home, but they do have their parents' cell phones, or they even have iPads or tablets. So this gives them an option to read thousands and thousands of books. Um, so you set up your class. Um, this is my class from last year, but and you can go ahead and you can enable home access for them to read their books at home. Um, you just set up your class, and what they see is they go in, they click on the app, they click on their name, and then they get to read books. I can assign student books, or I can let them choose their something they're interested in. I assign students books for the most part, but a lot of times, once we get to that part in reading where they can read on Epic, I kind of let them read whatever they want to read. So, again, they're still looking at words, they're still reading, but it's just they're doing it on an iPad. The next one I use with my students is called MyOn. And MyOn is a little bit more advanced. We usually use it with the grades 3 through 5, but last year I did try it with my first grade class and they loved it. So I'm going to try to use it again this year. But same thing like Epic, you go ahead, put your students' names in, um, and you can assign them books. However, what I like with MyOn is you can go ahead and a lot of times on Epic, um, the book is read to the students. So I think a lot of times in first grade, if students are struggling with reading, they like having the book read to them. I mean, it highlights the words so they're able to see, where the person is reading to them, but it's still read to them. But on MyOn, you can go in and you can turn on and off the audiobook. So they have to read it or to themselves. or they have to choose another book if it's too hard for them. However, like for this student, it gives you the choice. You can have it read to them all the time, have it off all the time, or weekends only is another option. Um, and the other part I like about this is after the students read every single book, they have to take a little quiz, and they take like a 5 question quiz in the book, and that way I can test their comprehension. So I can go in and see, okay, Jamie's reading at a level D, and when he's taking the comprehension quizzes, he's not doing so well. So I can switch him um, to, a level down so maybe he can understand the text better. Um, the last thing I want, so those are two apps I use in my classroom. The last thing I want to show you is this article I found online, and it has to do with students reading from um, just a regular paper book and then on the iPad. And I found something interesting here. I can't find where it is right now, but it said that a lot of times they're seeing issues with students that are reading from iPads constantly because they feel as though their comprehension is decreasing. So they think it's harder to comprehend if they're reading from a tablet or an iPad as opposed to a paperback book, um, which I totally agree with because in my class, I want my students to, read from a book as well as get the experience with the tablet and stuff. But I mean, there was a lot more in this article, but it just pretty much said that you should expose your students to paperback as a, and you can still expose them to the digital, but also keep in mind that reading a regular paper book is, you know, still the best. All right, I think that's it.